Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Allen. My name is Tech. We recently looked at the prisoner-taking policies of both military forces who fought in the Clone Wars. While it made a lot of sense that droids would take living clones prisoners because clones are humans and don't want to die, the bigger question that came up is, do droids share that same mentality? It's very clear to me that certain battle droids seem to not only have emotions and feelings, but even feared death. Why would droids be designed in this way, I asked. From our current understanding of AI and computers, authentically replicating human feelings is near impossible, and also a secondary concern and priority when compared to programming actual functional routines into a robot. So why are droids in Star Wars either programmed with or develop personalities and emotions? Well, that's what we're going to take a look at today. Star Wars was written and released during a time period when most individuals did not have computers in their households. In 1977, Byte magazine released an article about the trinity of home computing. It featured three machines, the Apple II, the Commodore PET, and the TRS-80. Now, they did sell millions of these personal computers, but still back then not everyone had access to computers in their hand like we do, with these phones. And these personal computers were mostly just used for word processing. They also had some rudimentary programs built onto them. Now, the type of droids that George Lucas and his team built for the original Star Wars films were far more advanced than anything the average consumer had ever seen. They were far closer to human beings in personality and behavior than the personal computers of the time. And unlike these personal computers who mimicked human behavior,
hello, I'm Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag.
These droids actually seemed alive, and that's what made them really, really cool.
How did we get into this mess? I really don't know how.
Well, the secret was they actually put people inside of those droids. Now, creators and directors usually don't feel the need to explain something if it's not something that they think the viewers are thinking about. And the whole concept of golden talking robots was so far into the realm of science fiction that it might as well just be fantasy. Star Wars has always been a bit light on the science and heavier on the fiction and the richness of the worlds they create. And while there have been droids and machine men and robots in literature and movies far before Star Wars was created, there was always something a bit different about the personalities of the droids we saw on screen. There's a reason why George Lucas doesn't call these robots, but he calls them droids instead. This is a term that is specifically coined by Lucasfilm and actually is trademarked by them. And the word droid obviously comes from android, which is a robot that mimics the behavior and appearance of a human being. And so the main focus on these droids from conception was how they interacted with other characters and not necessarily how they were made and function. And so one of the main reasons why droids in Star Wars have personalities is because George Lucas, as an artist and creator, realized that this would be really cool for fans to see. Now, it's said that in Star Wars, most droids lack the processing power to be labeled sentient. They can only perform rudimentary tasks. Think about gonk droids or mouse droids. One was a moving power generator and living god, and the other zoomed around delivering things and performing basic maintenance. But from what we can tell, most droids, including the droids that we just mentioned, clearly did have artificial intelligence routines installed into them. Furthermore, these systems are actually quite robust and open-ended. These droids are clearly able to interact with their environment, learn about things, and then learn new skills. I would even classify them as artificial general intelligence or true AI. What modern researchers consider as qualifiers for artificial general intelligence is an intelligence capable of understanding or learning any intellectual task a human being can. A great example of a robot literally learning tasks like a living being would be IG-11. After it suffered a traumatic brain injury that was an accident, Ugnaught Vapor farmer Queel begins teaching the droids the basics of living. IG-11 really does struggle at first. He's almost like a newborn baby or an older person who suffered brain and nerve damage because of a stroke. Now, some academics reserve the term true AI for intelligences that are either self-aware or seem to have sentience, and that actually is something we see from droids as well. C-3PO, through both his self-preservation programming and awareness of his own fragility, is constantly complaining about the dangers he's put in. I would argue that this behavior goes far beyond preset self-preservation programming, because oftentimes C-3PO's fear of death prevents him from executing his primary programming, which is to help serve people. What makes C-3PO even more sentient and special is the fact that when faced with the prospect of death, or at least in a droid's case, a memory wipe, C-3PO is still willing to go through it because he wants to help out his friends, who he clearly has made very meaningful connections with.
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
In Star Wars, it's not just how advanced a droid brain is. This doesn't determine their intelligence necessarily. There's also a secondary factor, and that's their memory. These droids, just like our cell phones or laptops, have storage space. And just like a human being, as the droid lives longer, it gathers more experiences, which it analyzes, and this eventually creates the personality that we see. It's said that while emotions aren't usually programmed into droids, if a droid has seen enough different experiences and hasn't had a memory wipe in a long time, you'll start seeing these weird personality quirks develop. If we take a look at astromechs like Chopper, a C-110P droid, or R2-D2, a R2 series unit, these are great examples of what happened to droids who don't have their memories wiped at all. R2-D2 is not only an extremely brave and smart astromech, he also seems to genuinely care about the individuals close to him despite his rudimentary ability to communicate. In some ways, R2-D2 is even more alive than C-3PO because unlike the protocol droid, R2-D2 has never had his memory wiped even once. Chopper, on the other hand, is an even older droid, and it seems like he's even more alive and human and neurotic. Chopper constantly picks fights with other members of the crew, he disobeys orders constantly, and he spends a good portion of his time engaging in random shenanigans. Now, memory wipes are a common procedure used by most organizations and owners of droids. Luke is asked by his own rebel mechanics whether he wants to wipe R2-D2's astromech brain on numerous occasions, and if it weren't for Luke's open-mindedness and lack of fear of droids, it's very likely that R2-D2 would have had his memory wiped, like all of the other units. Memory wipes and just general regulations against droids went up significantly after the Clone Wars ended. This was because many worlds greatly suffered beneath the Durasteel boots of the Separatist droid army. There was plenty of well-deserved anti-droid sentiment all across the galaxy. The Mos Eisley Cantina famously banned droids from coming inside and getting served. Even more common were restraining bolts. These were devices that were strapped onto a droid, and they could limit its function and force it to be obedient and lack any type of personality. Lando Calrissian's co-pilot was a droid activist, L337. She hated the idea of restraining bolts and believed that they were barbaric. During one mission to the mines of Kessel, L337 freed the restraining bolts of several droids. They immediately began carrying out the greatest fear of any organic being, a robot revolution. She, like many of the more complicated droids, believed in her own sentience and self-worth. But views like hers were not popular, especially in the Outer Rim amongst organics. So it seems like more or less when you have a supervised droid which is owned by a human being or some other kind of organic alien, there are measures taken to make sure that the droid doesn't become too sentient. There's almost like a social contract out there that's not all that different from dog owners being forced to pick up the poop of their doggos. Most droids in the galaxy seem to be property either of individuals or a company or a government. These owners might actually be responsible for the actions of their droids. But when it comes to the Separatist droid army, which is deployed in mass and destroyed in mass, it's possible that shortcuts were made in their maintenance cycles and there just wasn't enough time to make sure that every droid received their routine memory wipes. Or perhaps Separatist leaders like to have droids with memories and experiences. Maybe that's what made them much more dangerous, unpredictable, and effective on the battlefield. Some of the battle droids we see with the most interesting personalities have been alive for decades without maintenance, like the Separatist droids who end up fighting against the Empire. And so my conclusion is that droids definitely can be sentient and display emotions. But they also need to be given the opportunity to become self-aware first and learn about the world around them. This can only be achieved by stopping memory wipes and encouraging a droid to interact more with living beings. So there you have it, guys. That is the reason why droids in Star Wars can exhibit emotions and personalities. Now, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this. Is it dangerous to let a droid like R2-D2 to become you know, a little more human-like and have more personality, or should we just put a restraining bolt on all of them? Well, guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.